to a session of empowering women in public spaces. Thank you for joining us all. I'm Rozina Spinnoy, based here in Brussels, and from the NGO, small NGO called Belgium, but I'm also a design strategist and social entrepreneur. This is our first session of this year, and we had actually launched about a year ago. It was in February 2021 when I decided to collaborate with a few people around the world. Actually, there was a lovely woman in Northern America who was teaching self-defense online free. And it was another woman in Bulgaria, Alaska. And there's another woman in South Asia, Kulsum Hazara, and we kind of collaborated on this sort of common vision of sports and public space, and also empowering women as we sort of were teaching self-defense. And so that's where the initiative came out from. And also since then, we've collaborated with Luisa Bravo of City Space Architecture, co-organiser and co-host with me, that we're organising these sessions on empowering women public space. And also we did one on empowering women in climate change, which we did for the Innovate for Cities conference last year that UN Habitat organised, as well as the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate Change. And really the session is to be kind of informal, and organic, that we chat about, of course, what our amazing three speakers who have joined us are doing professionally, but also their link to empowering women in public space and what they're doing. So on that note, I will also just introduce our three speakers of Silvana Hoekstra from L'Oréal Brussels. Thank you for joining us, Silvana. Bia Ercolini from Touche Pote, and also Rosie Romero from OurB. So on that note, I will pass over also to Luisa, but just very quickly to run over the program, we just do the intro. We will also give a format of the questions that we have, and also as I say, have a sort of informal discussion and presentations from what you all do. And the reason this is important also to the NGO that I'm working in is that we're really started to get more and more involved in urban space, placemaking, inclusion and diversity, and gender issues. And so this was the kind of purpose of bringing us together, having informal conversations, and also to plan for the year a kind of framework for other collaborations that we have in the pipeline and other events. And maybe Luisa can go into that more. We'll be potentially doing something at the World Urban Forum this year, and also potentially with the new European Bauhaus. So Luisa, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Rozina, for organizing this event today, but also for leading this whole initiative, which I just joined, well, recently, as you said, since City Space Architecture is working on public space through different projects and initiatives. And we also cooperate with the UN Habitat Global Public Space Program. So we develop projects at the global level, but also are very sensitive regarding contexts, places, and people. Just to give you an idea, we develop the Journal of Public Space, which is the first ever journal and entirely dedicated to public space, which is an open access resource, and we developed the journal in cooperation with UN Habitat since 2016. So this is the reason why Rozina is mentioning a potential activity at the World Urban Forum, which is a major summit organized every 2 years by UN Habitat, since I'm directly involved in many public space activities and events. So let's see how this initiative, having these meetings in a very formal, non-formal, format in terms of meeting women, having conversation, sharing experiences. Let's see how this is evolving into a more, structured initiative, so that we can later think about developing it further. So I think it's all from my side for now. So Rozina, maybe you can introduce the speakers.
Yeah. So I'll introduce Silvana Hoekstra firstly. Silvana Hoekstra is a brand communication lead for L'Oréal Paris in Benelux, as well as the L'Oréal for the Future Leadership Team. She's responsible for the localization of the brand causes, and she's also the project lead on Stand Up Against Street Harassment, which L'Oréal launched with their partners Touche Pote with B, who's joining us. And also we have B. Ercolini, who's joining us. So pioneering the fight against street harassment and sexism. She founded Touche Pote in 2012, a non-profit NGO that sends actors to schools and planned parenthood about sexism. So our organisation also creates campaigns that change minds, work with the city and the police, actually in Brussels region, and lobbies for political solutions. Believing in more gender-based, balanced world. B. Ercolini also launched the Belgian edition of Elle magazine in 2003. So she was the editor-in-chief and editorial team director and used the title to promote gender equality and topics. Also, as a journalist, she runs a chronicle which focuses on gender inequality and women's advancement, which in 2017, she launched also a women's social club in Brussels called B. Did I pronounce that right, B? Yeah. Its purpose is empowerment and networking for fun. So I'll just introduce everyone. I'll introduce Rosie as well, and then we'll go to Silvana in the first instance. So Rosie graduated in architecture, urban projects and urban cultures at the University of KU Leuven in Brussels in Belgium and Judson University in Chicago. She worked in Mayfield Architects in California, and currently she's the co-founder and leading project manager at OurB, an urban activist collective who helps create processes, moments and places through inclusive methods, building environments and communities around a shared space in order to create open dialogue and exchange knowledge, and creates connections that will inspire community agency over the built environment. So I'll start off with Silvana. Silvana, if you want to explain a little bit more and sort of delve deeper into what you're doing and what your organization at L'Oréal is doing.
Yes, so thanks of all for the introduction and the invite. So really interesting to hear everything. So within L'Oréal, I'm the head of communications for mass market division, of which our most important and biggest brand is L'Oréal Paris. If we look at L'Oréal Paris, I think all of you know the slogan, because I'm worth it. And because I'm worth it, it's actually already been around since the 70s. And it's really a part of also the women's rights movement, where it was actually one of the very first times that they talked to women directly in ads. So it was a time where actually we used to speak to the men because they hold the wallets. So and since then it never left the brand. It became really part of the identity. And I think today it's just as relevant as it was then. And now more in terms of having self-confidence, but also feeling safe and doing everything you want and you like, and of course with all the body positivity movements going on. So it's still a slogan that really fits the brand. So for me, it's really cool to be a part of this story. And that's also why we set up some partnerships to continue this story. We see that's becoming more and more relevant in the discussion actually with our consumers and the impact that we have. So, and next to that, Rozina also told indeed that I'm part of the L'Oréal for the Future team. So that's actually our overall strategy for the coming 10 years in terms of both our climate impact as well as our social impact. So it also includes the brand causes that we activate, but it's also about our footprint. And then I'm responsible specifically for the Benelux, so translating what we decided on an international level to concrete steps and actions within the Benelux, so the Netherlands and Belgium. So I think, Rozina, you wanted to just keep it with the introduction now, right? Or do you want me to share more about?
Yeah, no, I think just with the introduction and the tour de table just now, and then we'll kind of delve deeper into the questions and the discussion, and also with our participants, the few participants that we had for this sort of intimate session. B, I go on to you. If you would like to just share a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Rozina. Well, I'm a slasher. I like to make different things, and I spoke to Brigitte Beckart from today from L'Oréal, and I understood that they are at L'Oréal, and for me, we have something in common. We think that it's more powerful to be in the system and try to make good than to be out of the system alone, talking only with your little group of feminists, of women, etc. I think we have to talk to everybody, to men, to the police, to the children, to the teenagers, to change the world. So at the moment, I would say I have two hats. Yes, I am running a women's business club, BAB, and I'm sorry for the name. I know in English it's complicated. TPAMP. TPMP has 10 years this year and was born just after Sophie Peters in Belgium. Maybe you heard about her. She was a student and she directed a movie called Femmes de la Rue. And I think that movie was seen all around the world and created awareness about the problem of street harassment in Belgium, in other countries. So I was at that time editor-in-chief of Elle Belgium. And I wanted to support that movie and that movement. And really, there was a lot of energy created, and in a certain way, just creating a Facebook group at that time. There were 7,000 people in 1 or 2 weeks following that. There was a lot of emotion and energy. And then I had a job, but I had to start to have a second one and to create an NGO because politicians were calling us and public transport company. That problem, that topic at that time was like, comment on dit, hedgehog. They didn't know how to cope with it because politically it was very touchy, and you had the question also of migration, etc., etc. So it was really difficult. Well, but we coped with that. So now, this year, we have 3 main activities at TPMP. First, well, we are very honored to be chosen by L'Oréal to be the local partner NGO in order to give the training sessions, stand-up training sessions from OurB. So it's bystander. The idea is really to work on bystanders and to encourage everybody, whatever his or her gender or age or social apartness, etc., to react in order to stop street harassment and sexist harassment in public space. So this is one. The second thing is, as usual for now, 8 years, we send actors in schools in order them to play little improvisation stories in front of children from 10 years old until teenagers 18 years old. And 3, we are training 500 police men and women from 3 police zones in Brussels regions. Just to, this is what they call a barometric training. It means if they follow that class, they're gonna go forward in their career. So they have a full program, and we integrate that program with that day of training that goes. We start with comedians, and after we have a lawyer coming and explaining the law, and we show them how to welcome people who were harassed at the police station, etc., etc. So this is our activity for 2022. That's maybe not the easiest year, because of course we could not make a very nice launch with because those trainings at the moment are of course digital, mainly digital, but we wish that the pandemic is nearly over and we can meet the people presentially. Voilà.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Luisa, you know Rosie, you wanted to maybe introduce?
Yes. Rosie was already introduced by Rozina. Actually, I'm working with Rosie for a project related to public space, activating public space and reinforcing the bond between people and places.
Yes, exactly. And it's really nice to see you here. And I think I see Teresa also that has joined us.
Yes.
So it's a bit like a mini reunion from another project. But I'm really excited to be talking to everyone here and having the opportunity to be involved in a group with different backgrounds and disciplines and actions. And I feel like I'm always around architects and urbanists, and so it's very refreshing to kind of open this up a bit more. And so through my practice as an architect and as a spatial developer, I would say, or activist, I try to encourage the care practices as a way and as a means to change the systematic ways of perceiving what it means to be dominated or what it means to be in power in the city, because this is where everything kind of needs these power structures and relations, economic labor and all these kind of rebranded all ways of viewing power. And so I feel like care practices are a way to change this perspective and to change the focus to that caring is not only for the home, but is also for the public space. And it's not only for women to carry out, but also for anyone that is involved. So that's my take.
Thanks for sharing. Luisa, you want to continue maybe with the sort of...
Yes. So now that we all presented, our perspectives, I think that we can start. If any of the speakers have a presentation or would like to go into more deep contents regarding their own activities, I think it would be nice that later also those that are attending this event can ask questions to the speakers, because as I said, this is a conversation and it is mostly an opportunity to share reflections, experiences, and to reach some conclusions regarding what women can do actually in their presence in public space or in their projects on public spaces, how they can become more visible and how can they lead, initiatives and organizations, how they can get recognition. This is part of the conversation that I had with Rozina before starting this meeting. And we always have this feeling that the work is really hard from a female perspective. I don't want to be banal somehow. So this is something that everyone is saying, you know, every woman is always complaining, but this is not about complaining. This is about finding strategies or developing a clear path for empowerment. That I believe should come from ourselves, not from recognition of others. At some point we need recognition, but it is coming from evidence, from what we are doing and from our amazing work. So let's start with the first speaker. Maybe we go in the same way. Silvana, Bea. Bea is an Italian name, by the way. And yes.
Possiamo parlare italiano se vuoi. Yeah, sì.
Certo. And then Rosie, okay? Silvana.
Yes, so I think it would be really nice to explain a little bit more about the stand-up program. Also because it's a really great a link to our partnership with Bea. I think it might be nice to really start with a little video to just to show it best. So I'm going to see if it works if I share my screen. Host disabled. So no, then I'm just going to put it in the chat for you guys to watch it afterwards. So I'll just tell you a little bit more. Because what I was saying is that for L'Oreal, it's all about this women empowerment part. But being a really empowered woman also means you should be able to be wherever you want to be and to feel free to go wherever you want to go. So you cannot, we are still afraid to be alone on the streets. We are afraid to wear a short skirt or a lipstick because people say it's an invite for harassment. So really from a perspective of a brand like L'Oréal Paris, we still cannot be whoever we want to be. And then we also see, I think we have all seen many studies about this. Well, in our own study, we see that about 87% of the women has faced some kind of intimidation. And just 25% says that somebody, a witness, took action. So with this in mind, we started a stand up against street harassment.
But maybe you can try now because I gave you the file to share.
Let's share, So I think it works.
You have to turn on the sound, share the sound too.
Let me see, sharing screen.
It's not automatic. I know it. We use it a lot.
I don't see where I can share it.
We can see the video, but there is no sound.
Okay, up your screen. When you see the screen, you can share. Mm-hmm. I have in French de base, and then in the middle I have avancé, so advanced, I guess. Mm-hmm. And on advanced you have sound of the computer, I think.
Advanced computer audio. Yes. Share.
Normally
I'm only sharing sound. So this one I put on, then going back here. Do you now hear something? No. Still not?
No. But we can talk to it. Maybe
you can just read the text, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This, of course, is part of the training, Silvana, isn't it? And it's also in the street harassment training that, of course, I had the pleasure also to be to be invited to that training.
So I think it's best if I just put it in the chat for all of you. So what you see here are just these really common situations. My computer, it keeps on talking. So. And yeah, most people just don't do anything because we don't know what to do. And the training that we offer is called the 5D program, where we have the option to delay, to delegate, to direct, or to document, and to distract. So it gives you easy tools, and it depends on how safe you are feeling within the situation, how you act. So perhaps the direct method only works for you if you are in a very public place, or you're a strong person, or you have somewhat more power to share, while perhaps when you feel less confident, you use the tool to delay or things like that. So that's a really interesting, easy ways to act, and really things that we perhaps didn't come up with ourselves, and when we freeze when we see something like this happen. So I really believe it's a way to help people. And this is also why we really have this partnership with Touche, Pote, because they know so much about the subject, and they can add the knowledge that we as a brand perhaps do not have. And we, from a brand perspective, really add the power of our own voice. So we really use the podium that we have. So actually, we kickstarted during the 25th of November with a campaign during the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women. And we're now going to do a second campaign during the Anti-Street Harassment Week in April. So this is something that we're now just thinking of how to activate it in the best way. So to really keep the conversation going, make it relevant, and also create a visibility for the training, because there indeed what Bea said is that we really hope to also do it in person, and then to really get everybody involved. So we have the in-depth program, which I believe is really the strongest, but we also have an online program from 10 minutes where you can just already quickly get to know some tips and tricks, and we can spread the message even further. So I think, there we have this great partnership, and for us really a new way for brands to work together and to use this power for good, I think.
Thank you, Silvana.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yes, is the video available with subtitles in English?
You're on mute there, Silvana. I think it is. I think Via just put the link there from YouTube in the chat.
It's the French version.
Yes. Do you have?
But I'm sure Silvana has it easily. I have to look for it.
That's okay. We can also share that later on. Bea, you want to add to that?
Oh, I have many ideas to answer your question, how to empower women in public space. First, in order to empower all the women, I would share this video, and I would share the link, the first link I posted, because it's leading to our program of trainings, and I would encourage all the people I know to follow it, because of course, if everybody wants to intervene, but our life would change, and the life of women and young women, because this is also not only women, by the way, by genders, but this is also a youth topic. You know, it's OurB, I think, that made that survey years ago. It was about European young girls, and it appears that more than 81% of young European girls cope with street harassment before they are 17. So it's our daughters. It's a youth topic also. I have many ideas to empower women in public space, women who use public space, and women who think public space. I think you have to be good. You have to be pertinent. You have to come with solutions we are waiting for a long time, because we all know that for a long time, public space belonged to men. Men stay in public space, They talk together, they are having a glass, it's a drink, etc. Women run in public space because they go to school to take the children, they go shopping, they are just passing. And you know what? I don't know the word in English, but in French, a woman is not running, elle traîne. Et une traînée, en français, it's a prostitute. So if you are spending time in public space when you're a woman, it's because you're a prostitute. So it's really deep in mind. So I think that women working in public space have to work on security of other women. There must be light. There must be no open works, you know, chantier where it's dark. There is alors, in Brussels, we have a very young architect called Apolline Vranken. Probably you know her. She created les Journées du Matrimoine by opposition to patrimoine. And so patrimoine is heritage. And she wants to make the people to rediscover the city with the names of the women who build the city. This is an important way to give visibility to women in public space. Apolline is hosted by an NGO called Lilo. The director is Ariane Dirix. Lilo is coping with homeless problem, homeless people problem. And Ariane proposed Apolline to join that NGO because Ariane has a project for a long time ago. She wants to create a center, a special center for welcoming homeless women, because homeless women problem is huge, and they are raped, they are beaten, and in Brussels there is nothing is made for them. Apolline has worked on the Begin model, you know, les Begin, not the dance, but the nuns from Middle Age. And she wants to create, inspired by the Begin, she wants to create feminist architecture, collaborative architecture. These people are, you should invite them. They are very, very interesting. And also maybe, you know, Garance. Garance is another NGO working on street sexist harassment in public space, and they're making what they call exploration walk in order to identify the zones in a neighborhood or in a city that are not friendly. And I think that it's the moment for you to make proposals to mayors and politics and people who decide, because there is really a momentum now. The proof is, look, private company has decided to invest in order to help women facing that topic. Generations of feminists have been fighting, and there was that important moment that is the Convention d'Istanbul, Istanbul Declaration. And now it's very slow and invisible. It's like a big wheel. Countries are obliged to do something. They signed the Istanbul Declaration statement, and they are obliged to do something. So they have budget. They have budget to change the city. So it's your time, ladies.
It is indeed, and thank you for sharing that. Be totally aware of Garance and also the amazing work of Apolline, and that's indeed in the sort of agenda, as well as bringing in the policymakers into the discussion, because I think, as well as, you know, civic society, private sector, it's also, we need those decision makers at the table as well to really be part of that discussion.
There is a nice Brussels deputy called Marina G, and she's really working on feminism and urbanism, and I can give you also the contact if you want.
Thanks for that, Dave. Thank you. We'll probably delve deeper in a lot of what you've said there in a moment. Rosie?
Yes, actually, I'm very happy that you opened up very, very much so, motivating everyone talking about proposals and initiatives, because we've also started to come together as women in leadership, or women that are dealing a lot at work, in a boys' club, I would say, and trying to overcome a lot of this kind of status quo, or of how you should behave, and then how you should be as a leader, a woman as a leader, which tends to be very different than what men expect women to be as leaders, and what they expect men to be as leaders. So within that, we really opened up a sort of atmosphere that allows us to share stories and to be able to encourage each other in the different ways in which we find ourselves being challenged in this, and being challenged of our authority, let's say, as people in charge. And I found that also still struggling in academics, because now I'm teaching at KU Leuven, where I studied, and it's also there, even though it's supposed to be a progressive environment, it's still very much so top down, and you're not taken as seriously as maybe someone in the other gender would be in your position, and so it's always a struggle anywhere you go, in every sector, I feel like, and in the city, at work, at home, and so it's like an uphill battle that we must fight at all fronts. And within that, I also encourage my students with my teachings of having a different way of seeing space in that regard, and to challenge a bit more critically the city, and of how things are at the moment, and who is the city for at the moment, and who was the one who planned it, and why do we keep reproducing the same models over and over without questioning them. And I think through education, you really have a chance to change the mentality for the next architects and urbanists and policymakers that are going to be taking on the decisions within the next generations. And so within that, I feel that introducing the care practices, like I talked about, are really important, and not only to encourage women to be empowered, that caring is actually a powerful and very much so needed way of developing our spaces in our world, but to also bring this as a key player to change our cities as well, and to be able to protect each other in that sense. And I wanted to share a small quote, and so maybe I can share my screen. Just kind of quickly put it here. Can you see it?
Yeah, we see it.
So this, the picture I wanted to explain first, it's a moment where we were cooking pancakes in the streets in front of a homeless shelter, where our students and me are making interventions, and actually we are very much involved in the transformation, the architectural transformation of the building. And so a lot of the things that we do to engage with the communities in the area and with the residents of the shelter is to do this sort of mundane everyday activities that you would call them to be this domestic activities, like cooking and cleaning and doing things that they would have to do anyways, but to do it as a caring practice. And in this sense, you're bringing students to understand that as architects, we are not there to dominate and to say like space needs to be like this and we're designing this for you, but to change the role by placing them in the space and to serve the people which they're going to design for. And in that sense, they change the hierarchy and they change this relation of I know better or I know what you need to let me be here for you and let me be at the same level and let me serve you. And this is changing a perspective for the student and also the perspective of how the resident of the homeless shelter would approach and would actually engage you in a personal level, and you would actually learn more in this practice, in this caring practice, than you would as a normal architect trying to figure out what society needs. And so like that's kind of what we're trying to do through education and through my course. And so I just wanted to read this quote about care practices, and it says, practices that encourage caring and reproductive activities over productive and economically driven ones. The aim during the process is to use different caring methodologies. Reproductive activities have been confined to the domestic and private world, whereas productive activities are usually assigned to the public space. In this context, the latter correspond to men and the former to women. Having caring practices as one of this project's structuring guidelines makes us reflect on the limits between public space and private as common and domestic. We challenge this binary division to work with the different groups towards an inclusive future, which visualizes and revalues the caring spheres. So with this, I wanted to end on that note that it's good to protest and to really like try to fight the battles, but it's also good to try to understand how can we educate the other and the future generations.
Yes, that requires a completely different mindset, I guess, because it is so deeply embedded, you know, in this masculine culture, even for women. I mean, we have been raised up with this kind of culture. So, and now finding ourselves in a position that we are, you know, trying to define a different path for ourselves and for other women working with us. It's very challenging because there are some preconceptions that are difficult to be put aside, and people easily fall into those preconceptions because it comes kind of naturally, you know, comes by culture somehow. So that's the problem. Anytime there is this women's perspective, or if there is a woman up front, you know, and so the education is extremely important. I remember, for example, that several years ago, I was a visiting professor in Lebanon, because you know that now many Arab institutions are trying to put women in some key positions to show that women are holding those positions. So it's just a problem of representation, you know, showing women. And so I was invited because of my curriculum, but also because I am a woman. And so they needed, you know, female faces to show that they were inclusive and they were promoting diversity. This is from the institutional perspective. But then when I was working with the students, when I was in the class, you know, I understood that it's not just about representation, it is also and especially about culture, because these young students were not used to meet a professor that, well, maybe female professor, yes, but non-Arab female professor. So I had to deal with some difficulties, let's say. And so there was this discrepancy, you know, between the institution trying to deliver a message and the culture that was coming from students, from their daily life, how they were giving importance to a female professor, non-Arab female professor, how they were recognizing the reason why I was there, you know. So this is very difficult to manage. So in education also there are a lot of difficulties, especially in architectural education. I remember some years ago I was invited to share my challenges and difficulties in architectural education for a research project that was promoted by New Zealand female researchers. And so they asked me to write a document where I was writing down all my, you know, challenging and difficult experiences in architectural education. And so I did it, but it was really difficult also to, you know, describe, no, and to explain what it means, why this was having an impact on myself, on my career, on my being a woman, you know, in a foreign country, sometimes because I've been working a lot abroad, and how to explain to other women how this is a real threat for female professors, instructors in general. But this was very useful for me to understand that there are groups of female researchers that are actually collecting, you know, stories and feedbacks from women, and there is actually a ongoing research on these problems, especially in architectural education. So I've been into this, well, I just gave you 2 examples, but there is more because I've been into this issue many times. I also discussed this with Rozina. So, I mean, this is a common situation that I think most of us have experienced several times, let's say.
Yeah, indeed, Luisa, we certainly discussed it a lot before when we were even talking about the whole topic of women in the sector that are sort of being pushed aside slightly to have, you know, and male figures that seem to be overtaking. And so we need to sort of reclaim that space. But I also wanted to just sort of pose some questions and just start up the discussion. And please, our participants there as well, please feel free to contribute and to join in if you wish. But I'll maybe jump into question 2 initially, that I sort of listed down 3 questions Luisa and I kind of went over. Silvana, you obviously are working in the private sector, and you know it's fantastic that you have this collaboration with Bia's organization. I mean, how much are you seeing this kind of thing happening, and how important do you think it is to really have these interdisciplinary collaborations and across different sectors of the NGOs, the private, the public? Obviously with L'Oreal, it's maybe always been sort of, it's a slightly sort of, it's an obvious company as well to collaborate with the sort of women empowerment aspect. But I wanted to pose that to you and what you've come across there in sort of corporate social responsibility aspect.
So yeah, what you currently see is, to a little bit disrespectful, but call it a trend. We see in a lot of brands are moving towards these kind of partnerships, and I think it's a good thing, because we combine the spaces where the money and the podium is together with places where we really need it. And especially big companies like L'Oreal, we're talking to 2 billion people a year. So it's so easy to use the power for good. And everybody behind the scenes were people as well. And especially within L'Oreal are many women. So there's a lot of intrinsic motivation to search for these kind of partnerships and work on these goals. And actually within the group, it's a key target to touch the lives of 3 million people within the coming 3 years with our causes that we set up. So one of the biggest is actually stand-up, but we, for example, are also working together with Yves Saint Laurent on the Love is Not Abuse campaign. So it's really more about abuse within the home situation. We have this illiteracy campaign to really help women in underdeveloping countries. So we have a lot of initiatives, and actually from our side mainly are focused on women. Currently we're having the discussion to break it a bit more open to all kind of minorities, especially a project, for example, like street harassment really offers very easy tools that also work for any other person who feels intimidated in any situation. So yeah, I think it's a very visible transition that we see within the companies, taking responsibility that's expected, but also very willingly given. So I think it's a great movement, and especially I saw an interesting research was actually a little bit more about total social and environmental impact of companies, but where we saw that the consumer was also saying that they actually trusted, or at least put the responsibility with companies the most to make an impact in terms of social and environmental responsibility. They more than in governments, and also more than in NGOs, because of the size of the impact of the companies. So I think it's a fair point that companies take this responsibility.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing more and more companies with this sort of ESG aspect that are, I guess, having to kind of implement that and move on from the kind of CSR aspect, or even the threat of kind of greenwashing, which I think has been happening a lot in the past as well. Bia, I wanted to pose that to you, because you're doing the other side of public sector as well, of collaborating. How difficult was that for you to form those kind of partnerships across public sector? Because Brussels is not easy.
No, but I know it very well. But it's very interesting what's happening when a private company decide to commit themselves for social responsibility. I think, Silvana, there's one more thing we could add. It's a human resource intelligence, because I see how happy you are, Brigitte is, to being a L'Oréal employee, but other companies do that. They do that at Chanel also. They have also project that kind. And really the people working there, they are very happy to give their time and to give their energy to something that makes sense. And I think that we all need sense. Now, I must say that I'm a little, not surprised, but sometimes I have to laugh, because I have meetings with people from the city or the region or the state, and all the women, they say, okay, let's do it. Please come to Brussels, give the training. And the male colleague, they say, oh, but you are going to sell creams and lipsticks, and by the way, we have budget at the city. He told me that last week. We have budget. Let's spend the budget. I don't know on what planet they are living. States are broke. Cities are broke, and we should welcome and say thank you to the companies who say, okay, I'm going to fix that church, or I'm going to buy that painting for the museum. I'm going to try to fix a social problem. I think it's interesting. You know, for 10 years, I've been a lot of press with all the actions of TPMP. And this time, I think we had one press reaction. It's Les Grenades, it's the feminist media inside RTBF. So it was digital only, and it's because they're sisters. It's because we're friends, it's because we're sisters. But it's just, you're working for the devil. We don't talk about you. That's I was not aware of that, because since the beginning for Touche pas à ma Pote, I've been working with public money. I've been filling, you know, forms to receive grants, and sometimes I had it, and sometimes no. Most of the time I had it, but it was public money, and for that, okay, the press agrees to talk about what you are doing, but it's their money. Well, it's it's what I discovered doing that at the side of the stand-up training. It's how stupid people can be.
Again, that was something Luisa and I were talking about beforehand, saying that there's just not enough publicity and recognition of the good work that's out there. And that's, of course, where certainly the collaboration with private sector can help. But if you're not collaborating and you're doing good work, it's like you have to really be your own PR machine out there and marketing machine. Rosie, what about you? How do you feel about this sort of whole, oh sorry, Bia, you wanted to add something?
I'm sorry, Rosie, I would like to add a little something, because if I don't, you really will believe that my life is terrible, that I'm a total loser. It's working. We're gonna have ministers coming and attend the training. We're gonna have Mrs. Glatini, who's in charge of universities and high schools. So following her, we're gonna have all the universities. We are doing it for the STIB, so the public transportation in Brussels. And I am in contact with the people who are managing all the public transportations in Belgium. So we're gonna have the train, we're gonna have the Flemish bus, we're gonna have the woolen bus and trams, etc., etc. So it is working, but not with the press, really networking, I would say, and working nearly one-to-one. But yes, we of course we have people who are coming.
And the ambition is also the European Commission, Bia. Let's not forget that. I said the ambition is also the European Commission. I said,
yeah, we do that together, of course. Yes, like the cherry on the cake of 2022. Yes.
Absolutely. Rosie, just to come to you, how do you feel about that, about the partnership aspect, whether it be private or public sector? Because community, as you were talking about community, it's, you know, it's all the stakeholders around as well as the citizens. It's everyone else as well.
It's everyone, yeah. I've actually just recently been talking about this, because it's a balance to understand how much you can trust the private sector without trying to, without them taking over, let's say, maybe some of the things that you would like to do, and maybe directing it in the wrong direction because of maybe the power that they have over the project sometimes, especially in architecture. I see that a lot. And I think that we, as feminist practitioners, as I consider myself, I don't block myself from like saying, no, I won't work with this person or this. I will open up a conversation and understand what the intentions are behind the collaboration that maybe could happen, specifically what are the common grounds, and are these values that the things that we don't want to change as our main values, are they shared? And can we compromise other things that are not, let's say, our core main values? And so this is, I think, the important thing, to negotiate and find the common grounds. And as feminist practitioners, this is what we should be doing. And after that, to keep each other accountable, which is another practice, and to be open to this sort of communication and dialogue constantly. And so it's a difficult thing to do. I think the easiest thing to do is to say, no, I won't work with this and this and this and this person. I think the hardest thing to do is to find the common ground. And so, yeah, I see that more and more now with the private sector.
Thanks.
Yes, and also in conferences, anytime there is an all-male panel, I see reactions from women, but also and increasingly from men. This idea that people should be part of the conversation. It is becoming something that many are taking into account. And there are also some Facebook groups where they share, for example, female scientists over the centuries, because this is also part of the conversation regarding female empowerment, that our history is made of, male figures, while instead there were, female brilliant and very intelligent scientists, for example, that worked hard, to empower themselves during a period where it was almost impossible for female leaders to be seen or to reach, that level of recognition. So I think that this is growing as a way of, framing the role of women into the contemporary society. Yes, and I see Teresa. Teresa, you told me you were developing an exhibition, right, with the Goethe Institute in Cyprus?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. This was really nice, very refreshing for me, and also extremely refreshing to understand that it's not a Mediterranean or like an island problem, but really we're all facing the same issues. And it kind of like really strikes you and it hits home when you hear Rosie's story or when you hear Rozina, and we hear these stories that are happening all over Europe today, and we're still at the same place, and we're still at a conference, and we're still experiencing the same position. And I was thinking just now as we were listening to this, and it's all this beautiful group of women who are talking about it. And I remembered this short training that's taking place tomorrow in Cyprus. And it was really refreshing for me because actually the name of it is Educating Teenage Boys About Gender. And for me, this was like, whoa, okay, this is super, because this is what we end up doing. We end up talking about it between us. And I think in the beginning, it's also kind of uncomfortable to accept that there is a problem. Like if you asked me 6 months ago, I would be very frustrated to even admit that there is a gender problem. Of course there is, but I think deep inside us, especially if we're kind of dynamic and we're doing things, we like to ignore it or pretend that we can go over it. But really it is daunting how established and how structural this situation, like the need for structural changes. And for me, this announcement kind of hit home that perhaps it shouldn't only be us talking about it, or how we address and at what stage. So yes, it is about teenage boys. It is about school education and certain pivotal times that are really vital. And I don't have an answer. I'm just, thank you for including me in this conversation.
Teresa, I just want to jump in there. Yeah, thanks for contributing there. But no, you're absolutely right. I'm the mother of 3 teenage sons, and I think it's absolutely vital and educating them also on the empathy aspect, and that sort of relates to the care in the community. And we did a session with the football coaches at the club they went to on empathy, on this kind of care aspect. And I think so much is about the education, and we need to have definitely, men, women, girls, boys as part of that conversation for sure.
And of course, we need a safe space to begin discussing it. But on the other side, I think somewhere we almost forget, or I'm not sure how, but yeah, I think that part is also vital.
Luisa, you want to run into the other questions, or if anyone else wants to contribute, that's
Yes, we still have 2 questions for the speakers, but as I said, this is open. So if anyone that is attending would like to ask some questions, please just show up and say something. But now I will go to the question number 1. Rozina, is that okay? Yes, which is related to the pandemic that we are still suffering, at the global level. We know that the impact of the pandemic has affected the women mostly. Women were hit really hard because they had to deal with so many things at the same time, and also taking care of, school education at home and managing, their job and their family, children, and caring also of vulnerable members of the family, and this is what women are supposed to do. Also during the pandemic, we saw that the issue of safety in public spaces was growing, and this was an issue that was already existing before the pandemic, but it is now somehow highlighted also. So the question is how we can create the change we need to move forward in a community or a city or neighborhood. And what actions can we take around the street harassment and violence against women and girls, and how we can co-design safer public spaces? Of course, this is a big question, so it's we are not looking for big answers, but just reflections and opinions on this topic, why it is relevant, why it is important that we put our efforts in designing safer public spaces, especially for women. And, I'm into this feminist approach to public space because I'm now writing a thematic paper, especially on this topic. And especially in South America, there is this growing interest to deal with safety of women in public space. Also in countries like India, for example, this is really an issue, and women are sometimes living most of their time inside, at home. They don't go out because they don't really feel safe to show themselves out in the public domain. Also because of street harassment, or also the feeling of the idea of feeling uncomfortable, let's say, while being outside, because something could happen, even if it's not happening, but the feeling, very uncomfortable feeling. And this is an issue that is very, very much discussed in several geographical areas. It is also discussed in Europe, but it doesn't have so much impact on women's life in Europe as it actually has in those geographical areas. I don't know if you are familiar with such contexts, but it is really a big issue. So any reflections on this?
I was going to jump in there and see if any of our speakers, any of the audience, because I had a couple of exchanges and I don't know if you feel you want to contribute at all.
Yes, also I would like to add that UN Women has worked a lot in the past 10 years regarding street harassment and safety for women in public space. So they had several pilots in different cities, and so they developed also several reports addressing these as one of the main concerns for women. So maybe in Europe, it is a different perception of these as an issue in public space, I guess.
Hi, I'm Prakriti from India. Just to add to the same thing, I was also thinking about how safety and public spaces, safety for women work. So I just wanted to add to this question because I was also reflecting on this. In the Indian context, sometimes the number of stakeholders who are vulnerable, the vulnerable communities are much larger in a sense. So I was just wondering, or just to add to this, was wondering if looking at it as gender neutral spaces rather than just focusing on women's safety, because going back to my context of being in an Indian city, maybe that is something that we need to, that is also something that I would like to hear your thoughts on.
Who wants to answer that? Thanks for that contribution.
Yes, I think that it's a very interesting perspective to take, that instead of pushing for women safety and safe spaces for women, to create an overall idea of safe space for everyone. I think there's 2 points for that. And this is something that I've been looking into in general. What does it mean to have a universal design versus an inclusive design? And the main difference is that you should recognize the inequalities and the unbalance on which certain identities give you or don't give you advantages or disadvantages. So not everyone is at the same level, depending on how many oppressions, angles of oppressions you have. It defines how you experience a space. So it's not only, let's say, women and men, is really much deeper than that. It goes into race, disability, background. There's so many things that you could be oppressed from. There's so many different lenses nowadays, age and all these things. So I feel like it's not even just that lens of gender neutral or women's safe spaces. Is more about recognizing the diversity and this like the idea that we're not all starting from the same level of privilege. And so I think it's about that. It's about recognizing that women don't have that much privilege as men. It's about recognizing that women of color don't have that much privilege as white women. It's about recognizing that queer women don't have as much privilege as women. And so it's all these different angles. It's about opening more that diversity instead of making a universal fix. I feel like.
Couldn't agree more on that, Rosie. That whole intersectionality is so important, and having that intersectional sort of lens. I recently actually was also discussing with somebody, and it was about women with disabilities in space and neurodiverse women. So it's not just the ethnic diversity, there's a whole spectrum of diversity out there that we need to really sort of delve deeper in and address more. And I think that that's not spoken about enough, because we're already just battling the sort of, you know, challenge of women in public space, but within that, there's a whole spectrum. Not sure if anyone else wants to contribute there. Luisa, do you want to go into the last question, maybe? You can say the question.
Yes. The last question is related to the climate emergency. And as Rozina mentioned, we organized this great event, I would say, empowering women and climate change for Innovate for Cities conference last year. And we had this amazing panel of very powerful women, you know, presenting projects and responses to climate emergency. So it was really, really very interesting discussion. So maybe we can share, Rozina, in the chat, the link to the to your website where you published the summary of this session, in case you would like to go back and see contents. But anyway, climate emergency is one of the most pressing challenges as well. There are big discussions at the global level, but still this relation between women, public spaces and climate change is not well established, also in terms of awareness. So, and this is also what I was telling you before, so that sometimes women are not so visible in what they do and in the position they have, in the career they are developing in a specific sector. So, and this is also, again, same question, how can we create that awareness, especially from corporates and policy-making perspective, because I think we should go up to this very, you know, strong, powerful and relevant, as Silvana was mentioning, you know, numbers of such big organizations are huge. So it is important that we rise up this question to corporates, policymakers, and those that are in leading positions. So how can we do this?
Sorry, Luisa, I also seen that Bibi's hand was up, and Bibi, you wanted to maybe contribute
Yeah.
something there before we jump in.
Yeah, do you hear me well?
We hear you. Please tell us where you're from as well, where you're based.
Oh yeah, sure. 1 second. I'm dealing with two screens, so that's always a kind of a difficulty. Oh, now I lost everything. But I'm Bibi. I'm from Amsterdam, and I'm a student, urban planning, master's student, and now I'm going to write my thesis, and I'm thinking of writing it about perceived safety of women. So I had a question which was more related to the previous question, but if you want to answer your second question first, Luisa, that's also fine, then I can wait.
No, you can go ahead, please.
Okay, well, it was a question to Rosaura, because you said that it's more about, well, it was about perceiving safety and creating more inclusive public spaces, and you said, if I understood you correctly, that in your Oh, that's Siri. That you think it's more about recognizing the diversity. But can you also think of any really physical interventions in the public space which could contribute to safer places or increase the safety feelings of women? Or you think that is not tackling the problem, if you understand me correctly?
No, I think it is tackling the problem. I think recognizing diversity it's about understanding what this diversity needs in order for them to realize themselves in their everyday life and activities. And so it's about recognizing what would put them in a better position for them to carry out their activities. And so indeed it's about design. It's about providing more secure spaces, more light at night, more different routes that are more into public spaces through this transition time where we are not yet there with the mentality that we need for others to create a safe space for each other. But I think it's about these precautions in design for the moment that can help in that regard within the talking about women's safety. So indeed, I think it becomes very physical and very much so and about design, and it's not about men designing, it's about women designing. And so I think that it's about giving more opportunity and more tools for the diversity to do it themselves. And I think that's where the key is.
Okay, thank you.
It's a classical debate between intersectional feminism and universalist feminism.
Yeah.
All the meeting ends on these. We can say that finally we had a window. Women had a window. And it's closed. It's closing now. It's interesting. I'm not saying I am a universalist feminist or I am for inclusion. I'm for everything until it works. And I would like to ask you something because we are supposed to stop in 5 minutes. May I help you? And what will you do for helping me and for helping each other? Rozina, you know what I'm waiting for you to do or for us to do together. But
no, of course, I think it's creating these connections. And indeed, we've spoken about the street harassment training that you did, and of course, to further extend that community, because you're doing, of course, you've been doing them in French, and you've got a session tomorrow. And then also, which is online, I believe.
Yeah, tomorrow we make it online. And we welcome Isabella Lenarduzzi, who's got a huge community of feminists my age. But also we have, for the second time, we have a team from FEDASIL. FEDASIL is, you know, it's what we call the Petit Chateau. It's the federal organizations that is welcoming migrants. The first place they go when they arrive in Belgium is at FEDASIL. And so they are training their teams and maybe some of their clients too.
Indeed, that's true. No, that's fantastic, the work you're doing. But you're asking what we're doing, and I think that's indeed the sort of purpose of having these discussions, because we're with Luisa and I, we've been really trying to bring in our own networks, make the connections, have the discussions, but also not just have the discussions, it's to take it to that higher level and to see where can we create a bigger platform. And so we were talking indeed of, you know, having this at UN Habitat at their conference, but also having the collaborations. I mean, I'm very lucky that certainly with UB, when I launched this, you were very open. You were saying, yep, let's collaborate. Let's see how we can, you know, create that awareness. And also, I think bringing in the voices around the world with our networks as well. I think that's really important. I mean, Luisa's based over in Bologna, and we've been collaborating, and we'll collaborate again on another project she'll be launching, but it's to exchange, amplify our voices, and ultimately bring in also public sector more into the conversation, not just at local city level, but also indeed regional, national, federal, European level. And hence, you know, see what can we do more. So, for example, for the World Urban Forum, we're talking about bringing in again having another network discussion with some of the women that we also had at the Empowering Women in Climate Change. You know, we had women that were representing also IKEA Foundation. We were having women, Sheila, who's doing an amazing project in India. Also Marcella, who was doing an amazing project over in South America and Brazil. So bringing in different women and understanding also, you know, what are the challenges in the regions, what are the challenges in those countries. But as we heard, of course, whether it be India, South America, or Europe, the challenges are the same. And I think it's more about really seeing how we can create more impact at policy level. We need more women in leadership. I mean, Rosie, I think it's great what you were mentioning there as well, with your initiative and what you're doing. And we need to have more of these discussions, but we need to ultimately influence the policymakers. We need more women in urbanism. This is another thing Luisa and I were saying. You know, we seem to be getting sort of at times, as I said, trying to be sort of pushed aside and not recognized for the work that we're doing. And so, you know, a white male figure can come along and just say, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm claiming this space as though it's his. And so I think we come across this so much. And I think with women supporting women, women coming together, not for it to be buzzwords, but to say, what can we do together? What can we create of substance? How can we collaborate and really amplify that message? Create more collaborations with public sector, private sector, across the board. And I'm blessed also. I'm very glad that, you know, my little NGO, we were chosen also to be one of the community partners of the new European Bauhaus, which is all about creating inclusive, sustainable, beautiful way of living, not just places. And that also leverages and brings another network to say, how can we create the interdisciplinary collaborations, that it's not just with, you know, not just with feminist organizations, but it's really across the board. Luisa, I don't know how you see that and what you want to add to that.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Rozina, but I also understand that this is a big challenge. And but let's start with the first step. And I think what we are doing now with these meetings, inviting women, is a good start, something that we can expand more, and also inviting women to support and to help share and raise that awareness that we are looking for. And then, of course, we can always organize, you know, major initiatives, major events. But I think these, as you know, an initiative can grow easily if we can expand the network of women that are willing to contribute by sharing opinions, reflections, personal stories, you know, and how we can understand how that improvement can be part of the change that we are looking for. So I think there is a lot of potential in this initiative, and we just need to understand how to make it more impactful, in the right place, with the right people, on the right occasion.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And also just to add, of course, as well as the WOOF event, there is this new European Bauhaus Festival event that's happening in Brussels, but it's also having satellite events in different places. So there's also an opportunity to collaborate more and to see what we can do. But I think indeed, as we're a couple of minutes over 8 o'clock there, and just want to thank you all for being here and for participating, for sharing your work and what you're doing. And as you know, we're recording this, of course, so the plan is indeed that we share this. We'll share it with all of you. We share it on the public forums and on social media. So I think that that's definitely something that we can do, which is good from today's session, and we plan to do more, so we'll be in touch for more sessions. So thank you again, and thank you for joining from India, from Cyprus, from Amsterdam, and everyone else who joined from other places. So thank you, everyone.
So if I might add to that, yeah, for me it was the first time to join in this kind of setting, and I can really say I learned much more than I might have shared. So I think it's a really nice platform, and especially you saying getting also more the private sector, etc. on board. It's really nice to see this different perspectives of things that are happening around the world. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you for joining.